Hello, everyone. We're grateful for the support of cooperators at Max Bell Foundation, which made this report and our ongoing work on this project possible. Welcome to Prosper Canada's webinar on Closing the Divide, Solutions for Canada's Financial Help Gap. I'm Sana Manikam, Manager of Policy and Systems Change at Prosper Canada. Today, we're sharing a preview into our upcoming report, which is a practical roadmap to expand access to trustworthy, affordable, and appropriate financial help for people with low and modest incomes in Canada. As part of the agenda today, after this introduction and a few housekeeping notes, we'll begin by setting the stage with an overview of financial vulnerability among low-income Canadians, presented by Eloise Duncan, CEO of the Financial Resilience Institute. From there, we'll introduce Prosper Canada's solution framework, outlining how the Financial Help Project seeks to close the financial help gap and build a stronger system of support, and then walk through a high-level roadmap for action across sectors and share a few models that we can learn from in the Canadian context. This will lead us into a panel discussion featuring perspectives from government, private sector, and community organizations. We'll close with an audience Q&A, giving you the chance to engage directly with our panelists. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the First People, the original people of this land who have been here since time immemorial. I'd like to express my deepest gratitude to First Nations, Inuit, and Métis communities and their ancestors who fulfilled their responsibilities to these lands, waters, plant life, and animal life so that we could all be here today. I'd like to acknowledge that I am on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, and the Haudenosaunee Iroquois Confederacy, and the Wendat peoples, which is also now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. I do not wish to falsely suggest that I have profound knowledge of the dynamic migration and relationships among all Indigenous nations and communities of this territory, as well as the treaties, covenants, and wampum belts of this land, but I view continuing to learn about these living agreements as part of my responsibilities towards advancing reconciliation. For those of you who aren't familiar with Prosper Canada's work, we are a national charity dedicated to expanding economic opportunity for people living in poverty. As Canada's leading national champion of financial empowerment, we work with government, businesses, and community partners to develop and promote financial policies, programs, and resources that transform lives and foster the prosperity of all Canadians. I will shortly be joined by my colleague Lisa Ray, Director of Systems Change at Prosper Canada. We're very happy to also be joined by 4 very passionate and knowledgeable speakers today from the financial service sector, the federal government, and the nonprofit and community sector. Eloise Duncan is the CEO and founder of the nonprofit Financial Resilience Institute. She's been researching and providing impact measurement on the financial health, financial vulnerability, and access to financial help challenges for Canadians living with low incomes for several years, also as a partner of Prosper Canada. Creator of the Financial Resilience Index, Eloise also advises globally as a United Nations Principles for Responsible Banking reviewer. Shauna Peddle is Associate Vice President of Sustainability at Cooperators. She uses her expertise in program design and systems thinking to provide strategic leadership for sustainability and climate embedment and reporting, helping the organization to realize its vision of catalyzing a resilient and sustainable society. Shauna makes an impact through strategic and collaborative partnerships related to climate adaptation and mitigation, disaster risk reduction, community resilience and financial security, and social purpose. Ruth Stephen directs the Behavioral Finance Lab at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, where she leads Canada's National Financial Literacy Strategy and oversees the development of behavioral science interventions and digital tools to help consumers make better financial decisions. She has 20 years of experience leading teams and providing strategic advice within the Canadian and Ontario governments. Last but not least, we have Gabrielle Rohel, who is a budget counselor with the ASAF in the southwest of Montreal, a consumer protection association, where she has supported individuals and families in managing debt, budgeting, and understanding consumer rights since 2001. She began her career in community organizing and advocacy, working with various women's organizations in Quebec. We thank each of you for your time and contributions today. To begin, I'm pleased to invite Eloise Duncan from the Financial Resilience Institute to set the context with an overview of the financial challenges facing low-income Canadians today. We'll have a few minutes for questions on this part of the presentation right after, so please feel free to write your questions in the chat. Over to you, Eloise.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's been an absolute honor to participate in the Advisory Council as well as through this webinar. So just setting the stage, Financial Resilience Institute is a not-for-profit and partner of Prosper Canada. We're working to help Canadians who need help most, and we've been measuring the financial resilience, financial health, and financial well-being of Canadians, including those living with low incomes and those who are most financially vulnerable for many years from a longitudinal perspective. It's thrilling to work to help support the advocacy and important financial empowerment sector work to help improve the lives of those who need help most. And we've got a number of deep dive reports on the financial vulnerability and key stressors of Canadians living with low incomes, as well as those facing systemic barriers, as well as reports on how access to help can be really critical and how it's more challenged for specific populations. So just a couple of level setting slides. So we have an index which measures household financial resilience at the national, provincial segment and individual household level for Canadians overall, as well as for those who are more financially vulnerable. This index measures household financial resilience across 9 behavioral sentiment and resilience indicators, and it's complemented by a national financial well-being study, which is conducted 3 times a year. And so what we see based on the index is that financial vulnerability is a mainstream issue crossing all household income demographics in Canada, with increased financial vulnerability for people living with low incomes. So as of February 2025, the mean Canada Financial Resilience score is 52.39, which means Canadians are just approaching resilience, but the mean financial resilience scores of Canadians living with low incomes is much more challenged. And just so we know how we're defining Canadians with low incomes, those are households with household income under 25,000, as well as those excluding single households with a household income under 49,999, which is very much the same definition that Statistics Canada uses and the definition that we've used throughout all of our trended reports. So the mean Canada Financial Resilience score for Canadians living with low incomes is actually 40.06 as of February, a good 12 index points lower than Canadians overall. And those living with a household income under 25,000 is even lower, 16 index points lower than Canadians. And we've got a deep dive report on this, which we will be publishing and is also going to be featured a little bit more in a complimentary webinar next week, which is September the 23rd at 9 o'clock Pacific, 12 o'clock Eastern. So financial vulnerability is a mainstream issue, and financial help is really, really critical for those who are living with low incomes and who are more financially vulnerable. We have an estimated 5.05 million low-income Canadian households based on our data as of February. It's about 1 in 5 of the population. And as you can see from this data, we have a significant number, so 61% of Canadians living with low incomes are facing significant financial hardship. That's nearly double those of Canadians overall. We have another 59% that have a negative or zero household savings rate. And our disaggregated data also highlights that these Canadians are much more likely to have to resort to predatory financial services and face many other financial inclusion and access to help gaps. Our institute has also conducted a lot of intersectional analysis, which highlights that households that are facing more than one barrier are even more financially vulnerable and have even more challenges. All the not-for-profits on this call who are serving these people will know this very, very well, but the data is very compelling. So for example, a woman who is not only a female single parent, but also a female single parent living with a low income, has a mean financial resilience score of 30.9, so she's financially vulnerable based on the index, and that's 9 points lower than just a female single parent who doesn't have a low income. We also see from our data that Canadians that are not working owing to a disability or facing barriers impacting their ability to work are significantly more financially vulnerable. We also been measuring the financial inclusion and access to help gaps of Canadians and Canadians with low incomes as an independent authority for many years. And we do this through the Financial Wellbeing Studies Instrument, which for this data, there's a sample size of just over 6,000 adult Canadians with a boost sample of 1,100 Canadians living with low income. So extremely robust sample sizes. What you can see here from the data, these are example access to help gaps that we have 11% of Canadians living with low incomes not able to access trustworthy financial help, for example, in 2024, much higher than those who are than Canadians overall. We also have challenges for low-income Canadians in accessing insurance to improve their financial security, help in managing their debt, help in accessing programs or services provided by not-for-profits, etc. So the data very much validates the criticality of government, financial institutions, not-for-profits, and the whole ecosystem in doing more to help reduce the financial help gap and to drive improved financial resilience outcomes and health and well-being outcomes for those who need help most. And our institute is not only tracking the gaps, but we're also tracking the correlation between improved financial inclusion and access to help and improved financial resilience outcomes for these folks over time as an independent authority. So this is quite important as the ecosystem looks to not only target impact using disaggregated data, but also to measure the impact of certain interventions on improved financial resilience, but also overall health and well-being outcomes of Canadians and families over time. We've also partnered with Prosper Canada to include this new access to help gap for our latest report, and it's been an absolute privilege to contribute data to also help provide data and evidence to support the case for the need for the Resilient Futures Programme and increased and sustained funding by government and others to support Canadians who need help most. What we see from this data is that we also have real challenges with people not being able to access affordable and also relevant financial help. So this is just sample data, but what we see again is the criticality of improved, relevant, affordable, inclusive and accessible help for those who need help most. More data is included in our trended reports, and we also have made available a free financial well-being index model linked to an overall well-being score, which is also available for free for any not-for-profit organization wanting to measure the subjective financial well-being of their stakeholders using their services over time. That's available through our website. And we're also very thrilled to be providing the individual free financial resilience score tool for all Canadians so that they can understand how they stack up compared to Canadians of a similar age and household income, with links to a bank of resources, many of which are provided by incredible organizations like Prosper Canada. So together, we all need to do more to help close the financial help gap. And again, it's been an honor to be part of the Advisory Council and to help with driving cross-sector collaboration to drive positive change.
Thank you so much, Eloise, for sharing those important insights. I don't quite see any questions in the chat yet, but I do have a question.
Sure.
So more than half of low-income Canadian households reported difficulty getting help with taxes.
Yeah.
What would you say explains why tax filing in particular stands out as such a big barrier?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, I'm not a complete expert on this. I think a lot of people who are actually on the line would have a really good sense of this. But tax filing is quite complex and it's not easy for many of us. But obviously, people living with low incomes may face additional barriers or challenges in terms of understanding where and how they should and could tax file their taxes. The other thing that we see from our data, which is concerning, is that there is not only a high proportion of Canadians living with low incomes that are facing challenges in tax filing help, but they're also having to pay for it, which is also challenging given, their low incomes and how challenged they are already with the high cost of living.
Thank you. And if I can ask, what do you think is driving the big gap in financial resilience between low-income Canadians and the overall population?
Yeah, again, I think many of the people on this line would have very deep frontline insights around that. But, what we do see is that Canadians living with low incomes obviously are struggling much more with the high cost of living, with financial stressors and shocks that may impact them. They are facing systemic barriers which can prevent their ability to access relevant and affordable financial help. And they can be facing other barriers which hold them back from understanding how they can maintain or improve their financial resilience in ways that are meaningful for them and their families. So it's a very complex question. But what we also see from our data is that financial resilience mobility is real, Sana, and so people's financial resilience and their vulnerability can change for better or for worse within a few months, either by adjusting their behaviors or accessing relevant help and support. Similarly, people can slip back, and it often takes just one or two unplanned life events which can really take a knock on a household or a family.
It's very true. And thank you for that, Elise. There was a question in the chat, which I think you just addressed that question in terms of what causes have been identified as to why these gaps exist. So thank you so much for that, Eloise. Um, and with that, to build on that context, I'll pass it over to my colleague, Lisa Ray, who will take us through Prosper Canada's solution framework and highlight how we're working to close the financial help gap.
Thank you, Senna, and thank you so much, Eloise, for sharing those insights, and Layla for popping that information into the chat for those who want to join for the deeper dive next week and into some of that data. So as you've just heard, the disparities and challenges are significant. And with trade disruptions that we're expecting, as well as the impact to employment, and the economy more broadly, we know that economic uncertainty is growing for many Canadians. And I'd like to take a few minutes to share what our project uncovered and how we worked with partners across sectors to identify practical solutions to the financial health gap. So a key contextual driver for this work is that it's informed by and aligned with two of the target outcomes of the National Financial Literacy Strategy launched by FCAC in 2021. Those priorities are priority 2, build and provide for diverse needs, and priority 4, enhance access to trustworthy and affordable financial help, particularly for vulnerable Canadians. And FCAC is actually in the process right now of renewing that strategy, given that the current strategy will go until 2026, and we'll be able to share a questionnaire with all of you today to be able to contribute your thoughts and ideas on that renewal. So in April 2023, we published a report called Missing for Those Who Need It Most, Canada's Financial Help Gap. And this report found that Canadians with low incomes are often unable to access the financial help they need. They're not regarded as a priority user segment by financial service providers, and private providers have little incentive to serve them. The report identifies 8 essential financial help services that people rely on, along with 10 key barriers that prevent access to financial help services. But it really finds that there is a structural market gap in the availability of trustworthy and affordable financial help services for people with low incomes. The 8 services that we looked at include conducting a financial health assessment, creating a financial plan, developing and following a budget, getting help with urgent financial problems, navigating and accessing appropriate financial products, setting and pursuing savings goals, managing debt, and filing taxes to access benefits. We also looked at who is providing these services today, and that landscape includes banks, credit unions, insurance providers, financial planners, credit counselors, insolvency trustees, commercial tax preparers, governments, and community organizations. That initial problem report created a shared understanding of the dimensions of the challenges that people with low income face when they're trying to access financial help services and the lack of availability of those services. So before we turn to the framework and dig in on solutions, we'd like your input through another poll. Again, you can use the QR code that is there, or Layla will pop in the chat the code that you can use. But we're hoping to hear from you. From your perspective, what is the greatest barrier to accessing financial help? So on the screen, we have lack of awareness, eligibility rules, or complexity, trust in providers, distance, digital access, and other. And happy to hear those have selected other, what other barriers you might be seeing in the chat. Lack of awareness in the lead strongly, as well as complexity. A lot of these ideas and barriers have shown up in our work on this project, as well as other work that that Prosper Canada has done and have informed our discussion on solutions. Thanks, Jenny. So digging in on the solutions framework. After working to achieve a broad consensus on the dimensions of the problem, we set to work on solutions. Our vision is simple, but also ambitious, that all Canadians, regardless of income, can access trustworthy, affordable, and appropriate financial help no matter where they live. The solutions framework that will be published in the coming weeks is designed as a practical roadmap to close the gap in access to affordable, appropriate, and trustworthy financial help for people with low incomes. It organizes solutions into 6 action domains, showcases promising practices in other countries, as well as emerging solutions that give us models to learn from. It helps define the role that government, the private sector, and community organizations can play in closing the gap. And it also identifies cross-sector collaboration as a key enabler to closing the gap. On the methodology, there is a full methodology section in the report, but I'll highlight some of the key drivers to our process. The report was developed through cross-sector engagement, bringing together voices from government, regulators, community organizations, and the financial sector, and guided by our National Advisory Committee. We learned from international experience, looking at approaches in the UK, the US, and Australia, as well as emerging practices in Canada to see what we could learn from. And it's also anchored in the lived experience of people with low incomes, the organizations that support them, and the expertise of frontline practitioners. So a little bit about our project advisory committee and key informants. I know this list looks very small, so you might not be able to read everyone's name, but a key takeaway that I'd like all of you to have is that part of this project has what's really enabled this project is the guidance and expertise of our project advisory committee and key informants, which included representatives from all 3 sectors, private sector, government, and community organizations that brought unique perspectives on the financial help landscape and what was necessary to close the gap. And I know many committee members are here today, and some indeed are joining us as panelists and speakers. And I want to thank you all for your commitment to this work and to improving the financial well-being of people with low incomes more broadly. The report identified 5 cross-cutting themes. The first is equity inclusion, ensuring solutions are designed to meet the needs of those who have been most excluded. The second is collaboration, because no single sector can close the financial help gap on its own. The third being evidence-informed action as vital, drawing on data and research to guide decisions and scale what works. And finally, the importance of trust, which must be built through co-design and continuous feedback with the communities these services are meant to support. As I mentioned, the solutions framework organizes actions into 6 action domains, and those are build capacity of frontline service providers, fund access to sustainable community financial help services, streamline administration and delivery of government benefits to improve take-up, leverage key government strategies to drive coordinated action, work to overcome distance and mobility barriers to accessing financial help, address diverse needs and population-specific financial help gaps. So we're going to dive into each of those domains. In the report, each action domain includes a description of the challenge and why that matters. And then solutions are organized under government, financial sector, and community. And for each area, we also offer promising practices or international spotlights of examples we can learn from. For today, I'll cover the challenges and solutions in each of the 6 domains, but I'm only going to highlight select examples in the interest of time and wanting to leave ample time for the panel and a chance to discuss and hear from all of you on your questions. So priority 1, which is build capacity of frontline service providers. Frontline staff are often the first point of contact for people seeking help. Yet across many mainstream providers, they don't always have access to consistent training, standards, or tools. This leads to uneven service quality across the country and missed opportunities to scale what works. There are opportunities for each sector to take action to address this gap. Governments can address this by funding and sharing research on consumer needs, setting clear regulations and training standards, and requiring regular reviews to ensure quality. The financial sector can take a more active role in training staff on how financial choices affect benefit eligibility, building specialist teams to support frontline workers, and partnering with nonprofits on training and referral pathways. There's also opportunity to embed stronger equity and vulnerability training into professional certification and continuing education. Community organizations can strengthen frontline capacity by conducting and sharing research, developing evidence-based tools, and collaborating with government and financial institutions to build overall capacity. Priority 2 is fund access to sustainable community financial help. There's strong evidence that shows that community organizations with the right expertise are well positioned to deliver trusted, tailored financial help. However, services are often limited in reach in many parts of the country, especially in rural and Indigenous communities, and we've seen a history of short-term pilot projects, which makes it nearly impossible to sustain or expand services. A more sustainable approach would ensure free community-delivered financial help is consistently funded and accessible across the country. Our report explores 2 main funding models. Governments can play a central role by funding high-quality services and integrating financial help into programs where it improves other service objectives, like housing, social services, job training, which are also related, social assistance. Financial institutions also have a role to play to co-invest with governments to expand community services and support the development of innovative or adapted delivery models. And community organizations can strengthen the case for sustained funding by pursuing cross-sector partnerships, piloting new approaches to expand reach, and demonstrating impact. With stable community investment, financial help services can become a lasting part of Canada's support system for people with low incomes and help people move towards financial stability as well as resilience. And we do have a promising practice in Canada $60 million initiative announced in budget 2024 to enhance financial stability and well-being. These funds will go to community organizations that provide free essential financial empowerment services, including tax filing, help accessing benefits, financial coaching and counseling, as well as financial education. And there's also a strong commitment with funding specifically available for organizations serving Black communities, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and those living with disabilities. We have been running the competitive process to select these organizations over the summer, and hope to be sharing more soon on how that will be rolling out. Other countries have also made impactful investments in financial help delivered by community and organizations. The UK's Money and Pension Services is funded through levies on financial organizations and pensions, and generates over £168 million annually to support both centralized and community-based service delivery. In Australia, they also make large investments in community delivered financial counseling that's funded through a voluntary model of industry contributions, alongside significant public investment, which reaches over 30,000 people annually for face-to-face, as well as through a national helpline. And both of these examples show that sustained investment, whether industry or government driven, rely on the community sector as the primary trusted delivery partner and able to meet people where they're at. Priority 3 is simplifying access to benefits. Tax filing and benefits access are critical supports for people with low incomes, yet the system is fragmented and overly complex. 1 in 5 low-income Canadians does not file taxes, according to some research. Which means that people are often missing out on benefits that could reduce hardship. And the complexity, as you can see here, Canada has over 300 income benefits and tax credits for people to navigate that may help them achieve financial stability and well-being. In terms of solutions, there's significant opportunity to improve take-up by simplifying how benefits are delivered. Governments can apply service design principles to make systems easier to navigate. Automatic tax filing for low-income households especially, as well as more tracking in terms of what is the population that a specific benefit is intended to reach, and who have we reached and who have we missed, and reporting on that publicly. Financial institutions can also support this effort by training frontline staff to connect clients with tax and benefit supports, embedding benefit screening tools into tax software, and using consumer feedback to adapt and improve services. Community organizations also play a critical role by identifying and supporting clients who need help with tax filing and benefits, integrating benefits navigation into core programs, and sharing insights from the front lines to inform service design. And in terms of models that we can look to, in the US, the IRS developed the Direct File program, which was originally introduced during COVID and then expanded. And it provides a free government-run filing option for simple tax returns, increasing access or reducing dependency on third-party providers, thereby saving money for individuals. And in Canada, many of you will be familiar with the Community Volunteer Income Tax Program, which in 2023 helped over 800,000 people claim over $2 billion in benefits. But there are also opportunities to enhance and expand on that service delivery model, including year-round services, virtual clinics, tailored supports for hard-to-reach groups, and filing options for gig workers or people who are low income and self-employed. And I know that some of this is being explored. Priority 4 is to leverage key government strategies. Right now, financial help is not consistently embedded in or aligned with federal and provincial strategies, whether that's poverty reduction, housing, disability and inclusion, reconciliation, or other social issues and policy issues that intersect with the financial lives of people with low incomes. But what we've seen is that when government integrates financial help into broader strategies, the impact grows. As a way forward, there's an opportunity for strategies to be more clearly leveraged and aligned. And on the horizon right now, we know that the renewal of the National Financial Literacy Strategy is a chance to put financial well-being at the center, and thereby having a stronger impact on the financial lives of people with low income. Governments can embed financial help into poverty reduction strategies, coordinate efforts nationally or regionally, and track progress through shared measurement frameworks. The financial sector can participate in the renewal process by joining nations, can ensure that underserved voices are heard and bring practical solutions forward. With stronger alignment, the financial help can become a core pillar of Canada's poverty reduction and inclusion efforts. And you can read more about some examples in our report, including BC's poverty reduction strategy that looks at access to benefits, the City of Calgary's Enough for All strategy, as well as the Toronto Public Library partnership with financial empowerment organizations. Priority 5 is on overcoming distance and mobility barriers. Canadians in rural, remote, and northern regions face unique barriers and challenges to accessing financial help. Limited infrastructure, high costs, and poor digital connectivity mean many can't access the financial help that they need. On the solution side, governments have policy and program levers to expand access to services. Investments in action are also much needed to close the digital divide and fund or test service models, designed for rural and remote populations and those who are experiencing mobility barriers. Financial institutions can improve accessibility by auditing their services, offering multi-channels of support, whether in person, by phone, online, as well as building partnerships with rural, remote, and Indigenous communities. And community organizations can also contribute by auditing accessibility, developing and scaling innovative delivery models, and forming partnerships to bring services closer to clients, as well as advocating for equitable access across all regions. In terms of promising practices, the Financial Wellness in First Nations project, which is funded by IG Wealth Management and co-designed with community partners, Seed Winnipeg, Sudbury, CFCS, as well as national partner AFOA Canada, and in partnership with Indigenous communities, has now reached over 50 First Nations communities in Northern Ontario and Manitoba, and has delivered over 21 million in new income to support over 9,000 individuals through culturally relevant services, and really understanding the needs in community related to financial help, but also the precursors to financial help in terms of access to ID, and those services as well. Other promising practices include Service Canada's mobile outreach teams, as well as CRA's pop-up tax clinics, as well as different hub and spoke partnerships that connect urban providers with rural and Indigenous communities. Priority 6 is around addressing diverse needs and population-specific gaps. Mainstream services are often not designed with equity in mind, leaving Indigenous peoples, racialized communities, people with disabilities, newcomers, as well as others experiencing unique barriers without adequate access or support. And a one-size-fits-all approach does not necessarily build trust or meet real needs of community members. To close the gap, governments can monitor and publish data on benefit take-up among underserved groups, direct CRA and Service Canada to partner with community, Indigenous, and business organizations on outreach, and invest in community-led initiative tailored to specific populations. Assessing current services and funding adapted models will help to ensure that equity is built in into the system at the outset. Financial institutions can advance inclusion by conducting consumer-centered research, partnering with organizations serving underserved groups, developing shared industry codes of practice, and ensuring frontline staff and leadership reflect the diversity of communities they serve. Community organizations are key to designing, testing, and scaling tailored service models, ensuring staff reflect client diversity, and creating continuous feedback loops to improve services based on lived experience. With these efforts, financial help can become more trusted, relevant, and effective for the people who need it most. So moving forward, the report offers some ideas that actors in each sector can consider to help us move forward and close the gap, as well as provide a call for collaborative action. We know that closing the financial help gap will require all sectors at the table. Government has a critical role to play in convening partners, setting national targets, and backing action with data, research, and funding. The financial sector can engage consumers directly, co-create solutions, and integrate services with community partners. And community organizations contribute frontline insights, deliver trusted services, and pilot innovative models that can be scaled. Together, by aligning these strengths, we can make meaningful progress on closing the gap. Thank you. So we're now going to move into the panel discussion portion of today's webinar. In just a moment, we'll take down the slides and I'll ask that the panelists turn on their cameras and come join me here on screen. We're very fortunate to have three panelists joining us today from the financial sector, from a community organization, as well as from the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. So I'll just ask if Shauna, Ruth, Gabrielle, if you could turn on your cameras. Great, thank you. And for our audience members, before we begin, I'll just note that if you have a question at any point, to add it to the chat box, and we'll do our best to address those questions as we go along. So to start off, I'll ask each panelist to briefly introduce themselves and share how you and your organization are connected to this work. Gabrielle, why don't I start with you?
Thank you, Lisa, and hello, everybody. Thank you for assisting today. My name is Gabrielle Roel, and I'm working for the ASPE du Sud-Ouest de Montréal, and we are a community-based organization located in Montreal, Quebec, and part of a network of about 40 community-based organizations that do a variety of financial empowerment work. So, for example, individual counseling for people who have a debt problem or want to reach a specific financial goal. We do training, again, for individuals, but also for staff members of other organizations. And lastly, we also do political advocacy work to try to get closer to the root causes of the problems of the people that we're working with and finding solutions. So when Prosper approached me to be part of the advisory council, I was very excited because that the result of this work hopefully will have a big impact on the work that we're doing, but especially on the people that we're working with.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Shauna, what is your connection to this work?
Hi, everybody. I'm Shauna Peddle. I'm the Associate Vice President of Sustainability at Cooperators. I've also led our community impact programming with a heavy focus on a more inclusive economy, which includes building financial resilience. Cooperators was founded about 80 years ago by farmers who couldn't find accessible, affordable, and safe insurance options, so they created their own. And as a result, as one of the largest financial cooperatives in the country, with hundreds of advisors embedded in communities from coast to coast, we're seeing that Canadians are more vulnerable to external financial pressures and stresses than they've ever been before. We're seeing it every day with our clients and within the communities that we serve. Our partnership with Prosper Canada has been ongoing since 2021, and it exemplifies our actions towards meeting the unmet needs of Canadians, no matter where they are in their life journey. And it supports our vision of resilient and sustainable communities in service to our own corporate purpose of financial security for Canadians and our communities. And we know that more needs to be done to close that financial inclusion gap, but we understand that we can't do this alone, that we really need a whole of society kind of approach to cultivating that inclusive economy that grants individuals access to the right financial tools and advice, empowering them to not only adapt to negative pressures and dynamic circumstances, but also to improve conditions for well-being. And we continue to actively partner with organizations like Prosper Canada and the Financial Resilience Institute to truly understand the needs and our role for our clients and our communities. We support this work with Prosper Canada because they share our values and they're also committed to practical and solutions-driven reports that are developed with multiple actors in this space, including voices of lived experience. Everyone involved in this work understands that we can build a more financially resilient Canada where everyone has access to the help they need to thrive, but we have to do it together. And I think that has been the best part of this work and the most important part of supporting the work of Prosper is just how they bring everybody together in this space to be able to share and to learn from each other. And purpose-driven organizations like ours, they thrive in that kind of environment. So we've really enjoyed being able to be supportive of this project. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Shauna. Ruth, what brings you to this work, and can you share a little bit about FCAC's connection to this work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Lisa. I'm very excited to be part of the conversation today. So my name is Ruth Stephen, and I'm the Director of the Behavioral Finance Lab at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And we have a mandate to strengthen the financial literacy of Canadians and also to help strengthen consumer protection. And we do this through regulating and supervising federally regulated financial institutions. So my team at the FCAC helps consumers make better financial decisions. And we do this through developing behavioral interventions that have reached over 700,000 consumers and digital tools that are accessed over 4.5 million times a year. But we also lead the development and impact measurement of Canada's National Financial Literacy Strategy. Now, the national strategy brings together stakeholders from across the ecosystem to coalesce around driving forward foundational priorities to strengthen the financial resilience of Canadians. It really recognizes that the onus is not just on consumers to strengthen their financial literacy, but it calls on the entire ecosystem to remove barriers and catalyze actions to create a more accessible, inclusive, and effective financial literacy ecosystem for all Canadians. And enhancing access to trustworthy and affordable financial help and building and providing for diverse needs are two two key priorities within the 6 priorities of the national strategy. And so we're very grateful to have been part of this work, part of the advisory committee, and grateful to Prosper for their leading work in bringing together so many members of the ecosystem to advance these priorities and in helping underserved consumers access the financial help that they need to make more informed and confident financial decisions. So really happy to be here today and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Thanks so much. I'm going to go in reverse order on the next one, but want to hear from all of you. So Ruth, from your perspective, what solutions or examples resonate the most for you? And what do you think that your sector, government writ large or FCAC more specifically would be interested in learning more about?
Absolutely. Well, there's so many solutions that resonate. I'm really heartened that the report is very solutions focused and lays out very clearly what each of us can do in the ecosystem to really help advance financial help. The solutions are also very timely. As Eloise laid out at the beginning of the conversation, we know that consumers are struggling. Our monthly financial well-being monitor shows that in the first quarter of 2025, half of Canadians reported struggling with financial commitments, and a full third reported needing to borrow money for their day-to-day needs. So the solutions framework has a wealth of insights that resonate with us. It brings a very practical lens to specific issues that support the goals of the National Financial Literacy Strategy. In particular, under the first solution area, which is building capacity of frontline service providers, the recommendation to share research on underserved consumer needs is crucial. The lack of easily accessible data is definitely a challenge. It's a challenge that we've heard of a lot. And that's why this year, FCAC has launched a new research and data exchange platform. The platform contains free, publicly available interactive data dashboards tracking the financial well-being of Canadians. And it was really important for us to include disaggregated data to provide insights on vulnerabilities. So users can go on the dashboard, apply filters, explore the data by age, gender, income, housing status, or province. And we look forward to adding additional data filters to the dashboard in the future. But one other solution that resonates with us is, of course, the fourth solution, which is leveraging key government strategies to drive coordinated action. And as I mentioned previously, the national strategy brings ecosystem stakeholders together to coalesce around key priorities to strengthen financial resilience. And the current strategy runs from 2021 to 2026. So we're currently assessing its impact and planning its renewal. So to this end, we're seeking feedback from stakeholders such as yourselves on how the national strategy has informed your work. And we would also welcome your thoughts on how it can remain relevant and impactful by addressing emerging trends, gaps, and opportunities. And the link to that questionnaire was shared in the meeting chat a bit earlier, and we look forward to obtaining your feedback.
Thanks, Ruth, for that. Lots of clear areas for intersection, and it's so welcome to have these feedback loops as well in terms of where that conversation and that input can continue. Shauna, from your perspective, what solutions or examples resonate the most, and what do you think your sector or cooperators specifically would be interested in learning more about?
As the report says, I think that financial services providers or the financial industry, we're uniquely positioned to deliver those inclusive services and improve the financial resilience of our clients overall. What really resonated for me from the solutions that were identified, the first is around training our frontline staff. So that's to understand the needs of low income and underserved clients and financially vulnerable clients overall, because they don't have to be low income to be financially vulnerable. So the more that we understand about this and the complications and the complexities of offering service, the better. But that also helps to build trust and strengthen relationships with our clients and the communities that we're serving. In addition to that, though, supporting the financial resilience of our employees is also an opportunity. So we're not just improving their lives, but we're also improving the quality of service that they can deliver to our clients. They're also happier at work, they're more engaged at work, and they're better able to offer that level of service that our clients come to expect from us. Lisa, can I ask you to mute your mic for me? Thank you. The other one was around partnering with community organizations. So we do that every year. We give about 4 to 4.5% of our net income at cooperators in community every year. So that's not news to us. It's really about extending our reach, ensuring our clients can access what I liked was recommended in the report was complementary and high quality support, beyond what we can do for them ourselves. So, for example, if we have an advisor in a community and somebody comes in to start talking to them about insurance or about financial planning, and there is some disconnect in that conversation and some questions are being raised that maybe one of our advisors simply aren't equipped to answer, having those partnerships with local community organizations that they can direct people to will be exceptionally helpful, not just for the client, but also for the advisor, because they don't feel like they're leaving somebody in the lurch or they're leaving somebody with a gap of understanding or knowledge. So I think forging those community partnerships in the places and the spaces where we don't offer service will be incredibly beneficial and can help us to expand our ability to offer service. In investing in those community-based models and in innovations that expand access for underserved groups, especially in rural and remote areas. We're in tiny communities across the country, and so even just being able to expand that level of service would be really great. But we can't do that alone. And I think we have to keep reminding ourselves as insurance companies, as banks, as credit unions, that it isn't just philanthropy. This work is not charity. This is an investment in the future and will ultimately drive business to us. And before we can do any of that, what really struck me was the need to measure and to understand, to track client financial resilience and well-being outcomes and deepen our understanding of underserved client segments so that we can design services that are responsive and inclusive and effective. Not every product, not every service is going to be of use to different facets. And so low income, high income, everybody in between, we have to be able to offer a suite of services that meet people where they're at. We're on that journey now with our clients in terms of better understanding what their resilience looks like, not just measuring it, but also digging into how we can support them to maintain and build their own financial resilience. And without that data, it's really hard to make the business case and to drive change within our organizations. Measurement is probably the biggest change that I'm seeing in the sector right now. Trying to understand that it's not just about net promoter scores and brand recognition. That's the best way to build our business is to actually support our clients better. When they are happy, when they feel that we're there for them, they're going to bring us more business. They're going to tell everyone they know about us. So better understanding where our clients are at and what they need will only drive business to us. So I'll say it one more time. This work is not charity. It's a differentiator. When you work with your clients to support them and to help them build better lives, that's what makes you a better organization. And that ultimately will drive more business to you.
Thanks so much for that, Shauna. Gabrielle, I'm hoping that you can share with those that have joined us today what the typical experience is of someone living on low income who has complex financial needs and is seeking financial help. I'm hoping that you can illustrate an example of where community delivered financial help services are working to improve the lives of people with low income.
Yeah, sure. I thought maybe I could tell you about a project we have here that we have developed with the Quebec credit unions, the Mouvement des Jardins, and which has been in place for over 20 years now. And it actually it wants to be an answer to a problem of exclusion for people on low income when they have a need to access credit. We work a lot with people on very low income, people who might be on welfare, and for them, everyday life is a daily juggling act to just try to meet their basic needs. They spend sometimes 70, 80, or 90% of their income just on rent. And so if an unforeseen event happen, their fridge breaks down or their washer breaks down, they don't even have $200 to buy a used model. So they try to turn to mainstream financial institutions, and they're typically turned down. So what's left is, well, they look on the internet and they do see there's a lot of offers for credit, but what's hard to figure out is that there's actually a lot of enormous fees attached to that, and which oftentimes they only find out once they're in this engrenage, and they just this leads them to a cycle of indebtedness, which does not help their situation but makes it worse. So in order to find a solution, we've worked with Desjardins to give no interest loans to people in those kind of situations. And so we can sit down together and we take a look at their financial capacity, and we can try to figure out what can they afford in order to pay back this loan. And sometimes actually there's not even 10 or 20 or $30 to pay back a loan. So we try to figure out, well, are there any benefits they might have missed out on? Are there any community resources which can help them cut down their spending on essential purchases? Any other kind of alternatives, so we can free up the amount necessary to pay it back, so people don't have, on top of paying back the loan, also pay back enormous amounts of interest and fees. So it's a program that clearly meets a need, which works. But of course, we don't have a lot of capacity actually to do that. So we can only help a tiny fraction of people who would need this kind of program. So for us, of course, what resonated a lot amongst the solutions was trying to find a model that provides stable funding for community organizations. I think we have proof that we have the skills and the expertise to work with low-income people. And when we do this work, we have good outcomes. But we have to devote so much time and energy and resources into trying to find new sources of funding, renewal funding, that is time that we can't spend on scaling the activities, trying to develop specific tools for specific sectors of the population, and just working with the people, and of course sharing tools, sharing best practices. I think that's something that would be a very, very important for everybody. And of course, collaborating. I mean, we have done some of it, but I think on a much larger scale, I think everybody would profit from working together to find out, well, where and how do we exclude people on low income, and what might be products that would really improve their lives, and how can the government maybe better regulate certain activities that really harm people on low income.
Thank you for that. I know hearing and reading about the challenge of people with low incomes in particular in accessing small dollar credit from trustworthy sources is such a challenge and a key gap. And it's incredible to hear about that example, that partnership with Desjardins, but also the demand for that to be available more broadly across the country and in more communities. So thank you for that. Shauna, I'm gonna go to you now. where do you see the greatest opportunities for cross-sector collaboration? And what do you think is needed to make it happen?
I think that we've proven through this work and through the really collaborative effort that we've made that we can actually collaborate across sectors to identify the opportunities and the solutions that we need to be able to serve underserved communities. The biggest opportunities for that collaboration are actually outside of the competitive space of financial institutions. It's working with those community organizations to invest in them doing what they do best. The solutions they're out there and they're happening right now, but it's ad hoc, it's localized, it's seriously underfunded. We need policy, we need funding models that work for people, that ensure that the work can continue so our community partners aren't just hopping from pilot to pilot to pilot, like you mentioned during the presentation. There is a challenge because I just noticed there was a question in the chat about us being financial institutions, not cooperators, but financial institutions being able to fund frontline work. And the challenge with that is that there are hundreds of organizations across the country in thousands of communities across the country. And how do we know who's who in the zoo, essentially, and who do we fund and who's doing the right work? So we typically will work with national level organizations like Prosper, who have that reach into communities and into community organizations in a bit of a different way. And I think that that's maybe the way we need to think about doing this is through programs that then channel money into the hands of organizations across the country for that frontline service delivery. So there's governments, businesses, there's also opportunity for philanthropy to come into this as well, coming together to ensure that sustained and that sufficient funding of community organizations. But like I just said to you, like we can't do this alone. I wish we could. I wish I had the money to be able to do this in a really meaningful way for every organization across the country. But we're not in every community across the country. But I think between all of us, we are. So if we can come together and figure out a way to make that sustained funding possible, and to work with governments, with every sector, to be able to do this in an effective way, because it's not just the financial services industry that can fund this work. I think that there's educational opportunities here. There's so many different ways that we can tap into different sources of support to be able to really have us step back and let those community organizations do what they do best.
Thanks, Shauna. Ruth, same question for you. Where do you think where do you see the greatest opportunity for cross-sector collaboration, and what's needed to make it happen?
Well, I'm really happy that the report puts an emphasis on cross-sectoral collaboration because it's really foundational to making progress. We found that through our engagements cross-sectorally, every player, every person at the table sees a different perspective of the challenges that consumers are facing, and each has a distinct role in helping to be a part of the solution. So the best partnerships we've seen are often joint partnerships between government, industry, community organizations, and academic institutions, with each member bringing particular expertise from what they've either seen in the field, what they've shown to be, what research shows to be an evidence-based solution, how they're directly interfacing with clients, or the overall policy frameworks and direction that can be brought to bear in the solutions discussion. So one of the areas that FCAC is advancing cross-sectoral collaboration specifically is in helping organizations measure the outcome and impact of their initiatives through the National Financial Literacy Strategy Measurement Plan. We all know it's extremely hard to measure the impact of financial literacy initiatives. And traditionally, measurement models have been focused on how many individuals have been reached or how many initiatives have been launched. But when we really focus in on outcomes and impact, that's when we can make a much stronger case for funding and also really target our collective efforts in the areas of greatest impact. So with the measurement plan, we have laid out a very systematic, structured, and accessible way of measuring consumer outcomes from financial literacy initiatives. And the feedback that we've heard from stakeholders has been extremely positive, particularly from smaller organizations that might not have the capacity, the internal capacity to be able to undertake very focused measurement approaches. And they've told us that it's helped them better understand their own impact. It's helped them make a stronger case for funding. So being able to measure impact is really an area where we've worked with the ecosystem to embed evidence-based outcomes-focused approaches.
Thank you for that. We've had a few questions come in through the chat, so I'm just going to look there before going back to our questions. One around adult literacy programs. Adult literacy programs are well positioned to provide frontline service, but we already teach financial literacy, and many of us have taken Prosper training. But our core funding doesn't allow us to build the capacity to deliver financial literacy on a deeper level. I'm not sure I see a question in there, but if there is a question in there and you'd like to put it in the chat, go ahead. But I think maybe potential, like seeing more potential for partnerships with a broader suite of community organizations that are reaching different populations specifically. I mean, I can answer that in that, I mean, it's definitely clear to Prosper Canada as a backbone organization, and through some of the work that we have done to try to scale community delivered financial help services, that there is strong demand across a number of different communities and demographic segments and geographies related to people with unique and disparate needs or experiencing barriers, and that there's a need for more coordination and cooperation within the community sector as well as with other sectors, including government and the private sector. But funding is a challenge. I mean, I think the funding model is definitely a challenge. And you know, there are other countries that have made more significant investments into financial help. Canada's is definitely, I think, on the right track with the Resilient Futures program that we'll see launched soon. But there's more opportunity, and I think more intersections of different social policy issues with the financial lives of people with low incomes. I don't know if any other panelists want to weigh in on that.
Yeah, maybe I can just add that I think you mentioned that the Resilient Futures program that Prosper Canada is rolling out, and I think this is a great first step, and I think it'll give us a lot of experience actually working together and giving everybody some stable funding. But of course, the challenge is how to make this more permanent. I mean, for at least for right now, it's a one-term an amount that is unique, that there's no stability yet. So if we want to be able to develop our activities, I think what we need is predictability. And I think you mentioned other countries, the models from other countries. And so what was really exciting to read in your report were the examples from Australia and from Britain, where they have actually developed models that bring that more long-term perspective into play, where the funding is either done via levies or via voluntary contributions. But as Shauna said, I mean, not one organization or institution can do that alone. That would really ask for collaborations from everybody across board, and to see that as a priority, to have stable funding and to make financial empowerment work much more accessible and to be able to scale it across the board. So I know that Australia in particular, they have developed standards for this kind of work, which I find very important. So not everybody can just invent themselves a budget or financial counselor. They have also developed standards for the industry. So what we call predatory lending is hopefully much more will not be able to happen anymore. And they have developed a government-sponsored program where people can ask for the type of emergency loans that I talked about in the beginning, where it's really widely available across Australia for low-income households to have this kind of emergency loans. So I think there are a lot of perspectives out there. So I'm very excited to start working on putting them in place.
Thank you, Gabrielle. I'm seeing a few questions in the chat come out related to specific populations, including people with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and in particular as it relates to settlement agreements and the ability to access funds through those settlements and the supports that are required for those. I might just try to put this into kind of a higher level question for our panelists around how can we ensure that solutions meet the needs of underserved populations and not just those who are coming through the doors of community organizations, but those who maybe are harder to serve. And while we're answering that question, I might go to you first, Ruth. I'm going to ask that someone from Prosper Canada share in the chat some of Prosper Canada's resources. I know that we have a recently released resource on sudden wealth syndrome and supports for Indigenous peoples specifically. And we also have our disability compass for people with disabilities. And there's links to partners there that we worked with who are specialized in providing benefit access for people with disabilities. And I'm hoping that sort of also is meeting the particular needs of those questions that have come through the chat. So Ruth, on underserved communities, what can we do to better reach underserved communities?
Thanks, Lisa. So priority 2 of the national strategy is about building for diverse needs, and it recognizes that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to meeting consumer needs. We need to really target our approach based on the populations we're seeking to impact. But within that, we need to understand the needs of the populations first and foremost and take a very intentional approach to meeting those needs. So understanding the needs means being able to access and collect the data on how specific groups are faring, and then understanding the evidence base in terms of what types of solutions can better meet the needs, the needs of these populations. Is also about building inclusivity into plans and initiatives and projects from the onset. It's a very deliberate decision in terms of applying that lens throughout from design to delivery and considering results on a disaggregated level. So I'll give you an example. One of the interventions that we run is with students from grade 6 to 12 in schools across Canada, and it's teaching them financial literacy principles in order to strengthen their financial confidence. We received a lot of great data from this intervention that shows that we closed the gender gap in financial literacy in certain areas and narrowed it in others. But we didn't rest on that. We decided to take it a step further and look at the disaggregated data to see how different groups were faring within those overall results. And what we found is that there are differing results in certain areas for various demographic groups. So our next step was to have conversations with some of our key stakeholder groups and tables to better understand what some of the underlying causes might be for seeing this disparity. And then our next step is tailoring our approach, which includes the design, which might include additional supports we provide around the intervention. But it's really about tailoring our approach to ensure that as we are seeing progress for the overall population, we're not leaving certain groups behind. So it really takes that intentionality, the willingness to delve into the data, the willingness to ask the right questions, but also the strong networks to be able to know who to contact, who might have information to help get to the bottom of certain issues. And based on what I'm seeing from this chat, this is an amazing network of people who have a lot of expertise in various areas to bear on a lot of these questions. So I think Prosper's role in bringing together this type of community is really important and valued.
Thank you so much, Ruth, and thank you so much to all of you. There are a few more sort of slides I want to get to as we sort of approach the end of our time together. But I just want to thank you so much for this rich conversation and for adding your perspectives, both as advisory committee members as well as in this conversation today. All of you have been along this journey with us since we have been working on the problem report since before that was released in 2023. This is hard work. This is complicated work. There's no easy solutions that are in there. And I just welcome the richness of this discussion and your participation in this work together. So thank you so much. I do want to do one last poll before we close out. Jenny, if you want to pull up the Mentimeter, audience members have had a chance to kind of get a sense from panelists and through our sharing of the report, what some of the solutions might be. And we looked to all of you because this work can't be done alone. It needs to be done together, and everyone has a role to play. But what is one action your organization could take in the next 6 months to help close the financial health gap? Oh. Some answers rolling in, focusing on helping service users access benefits, identify and attract substantial and long-term funding, research to advocacy, knowledge sharing, survey members' financial needs, resources to help people freely go through tax forms and file them. These are all great ideas. Better advertise free financial counseling services. Help the financially vulnerable to find those resources which they may not have access to. Explore funding opportunities, training for frontline staff. These are all great ideas, and these will continue to roll in, and we can assemble them and distribute them as we distribute the resources that come out of today. Thank you. Keep them coming, because I know people will want to see them. It's great to see what other organizations are doing to stay motivated in this work and identify other ideas that your organizations and different organizations are doing. So we are at the end of our time together. I want to thank all of you for joining us today. A special thank you to our speakers and panelists, Eloise Duncan, Shauna Peddle, Ruth Stephen, Gabrielle Rohel. Thank you for being along this journey together with us and for sharing your insights on this work. I look forward to sharing the final report with you when it's published in the coming weeks. We will also share details from the upcoming webinar from the Financial Resilience Institute that provides a deep dive on financial resilience. We'll also share that questionnaire on the National Financial Literacy Strategy from FCAC. We will share a recording of this work as well as the slides from this webinar and a short survey to hear from all of you. And please feel free to reach out to Sana or myself if you'd like to connect further on this work, or if you have further ideas that we could explore on how to improve, how to close the financial health gap for people with low incomes. Thank you so much, everyone.